Welcome back to the Berg Podcast. Thanks for joining us today. With me today is Ford.
Hey, how's it going?
And Dan.
Hey, everybody.
And today we're talking about navigating the job market, how to get a job in construction, essentially, right? And offline a little bit, we were talking a little bit to begin with about where the marketplace is right now in regards to getting a job in general, right?
Yeah, I think that there's a certain segment of people that in the last couple of years have gotten used to a certain style of being able to basically fall into a job. And right now it's gotten a little bit back to, you actually have to put your best effort into getting the job versus just basically showing up. I think that has transitioned. It's not bad because the reality, the trades are still way under what is needed, but it's allowed for a little bit more clarity. And I think also for companies to really try and, we're always selling ourselves to what our fit is, but actually being able to look at the candidates and identify how they fit to us a little bit more than we've ever been in the last few years. The last few years, it's been a little bit different. I mean, we were talking about it was sight unseen. It was like an auction and people were literally getting hired without even talking to the company that they applied at, and how we never got to that level, but we definitely have had to streamline some things. And we also talked about how by streamlining it, we've actually made it more robust, but it's also just the timeline has been condensed from what it used to be. I mean, there was times back in the day that it might be a 6-week process of meeting with people, meeting with the person, talking to them. It was not, but that transitioned in the last 5 years to, on the spot or different things that people were doing. They had job fairs where literally by the time you walked out of it, they actually saw the person, but that's just, and now we're kind of transitioning a little bit back to, doing the stuff that you need to do to actually become part of the team that you want to be part of.
Yeah, I think as a candidate, they've got to read the market, right? And you're right. We never got there, but we were definitely dealing with some competitors who were making offers based on applications, right? They got an application in the mail, and it was dependent, I know for sure, on the type of job, the level of the job that was being sought after. But some of it was, hey, we got an application, send them an offer letter. People were so desperate for employees for a couple of years there, where if you literally went through the effort of applying, you likely were going to get an offer or at least a conversation. And thankfully, it's kind of gotten away from that a little bit. The market, while still understaffed in a lot of areas, people are still in need. We are definitely seeing a trend of organizations, us included, of making sure that, there's no perfect process, but we're trying to find the right people for the organization along with the skill set. Right?
Well, and so I think that's true. And I think the market has moved a little bit more towards back to the center. I think that just based on, the politics of an election year, the uncertainty of the market itself, interest rates, a number of things that the bidding, which translates directly to the workforce, right? So the bidding and the actual award of these jobs is not coming as rapidly as it was a little while ago. There's still plenty of backlog. Everybody still has work, but it's not exactly the same. So I think it has changed. But I also think there is still a significant portion of the market that is just going to go full bore, and they are reaching out and, being active in trying to get people. And one of the things we've definitely seen is that if someone moves, that some of the companies that are, for lack of a better words, they are poaching people from other companies. So we're not talking about Ford applies for a job. We're talking about guys going out and actively trying to reach Ford and Bryan. By what's happening is if one guy goes, some of these companies are then saying, okay, well, is there anybody else you think I should call? And then they get their cell phone numbers and they call them, and they are sight unseen making pretty high offers. So it's in the labor part of the market, I think we've seen a slowing where you can't just walk in with no experience and get a job making a really good wage sight unseen. But I think that if you have some skills built up, and it can even make a claim to some experience, that we're seeing companies out there willing to just gamble and say, well, they say they can do this. And we've really taken a different approach to it lately. And we've made a commitment to field testing and to some other things, which I think is really important, not just for us, but also for the employee. And that's where we're trying to talk about what you want to bring to an interview, what you want to bring to this process. Mm-hmm. I think the reason I'm bringing it up is it's important, because if you come into it and you present yourself as something you're not, it is difficult to be that thing. You know what I mean? Like if I come into an interview and I say, I fine grade just as well as Ford does. Well, at some point they're going to put me in that machine and make me fine grade. And then do I or don't I? Yeah. You know? And at that point, if they paid me accordingly, at minimum, the company is going to be disgruntled. In a worst case scenario, they may move on from you. I guess they could ask you to take a pay cut, but that's not normally what happens. Normally they just say this person isn't a good fit for us. And one of the things that I'd really want to see come back into the market, quite honestly, more than the immediacy of the offers, is if we could get back to a point where companies put value on looking at a person's resume and seeing the jumps, right? Like I know when I first got into this industry in heavy civil specifically, not in my previous background, that was one of the things right off that Ford always said. He said, you know, when you're looking at a resume, look at how many times they jump and when, you're right. Like, do they get hired every year in February, March, and every year they're looking for a job in December, right? And that could be that somebody's hiring out of need. They need people, and then the guy comes in and then they leave. It could be that they're leaving for money, but whatever it is, why would they leave so often, right? Because one of the things I think is really important for guys looking to get into this industry or be in this industry or progress is to find a place that you can have a home. So you're not doing this all the time. Like your job shouldn't be finding a job, right? Like that's not how you end up with a career. A career is you find a spot that you make sense and you develop a plan for how you want to work through. And in some sense, there's a similarity to the job interview process in that you're trying to present to the owner, here's what I want to be. And the owner is trying to say, okay, here's a path to get you there. So I think that's really important as you come into the process of looking for a job. Don't look for a job, look for a career. Look for, this is what I want to do. And I think maybe this is a place that I want to do it. Because when you start to look, it used to be Ford would say like a quarter or 50 cents or something, that a guy'd move for 50 cents. And I think originally Ford used to say a nickel when he first said it, like whatever it was. It was a very small amount. But even if you make it $1, right? If you leave for $1, and let's say you're going to work 2,080 hours, so you made $2,000 more. And let's even say that you could work 400 hours overtime. So that's, another 400 at halftime. So you're making that $1.50. Right. So that's, at 400 hours, you know what I mean? You're talking $600. So $2,600, but then you're paying taxes on that, and when you break that down by 52 weeks, it's not that much money. I am not suggesting that $1 raise is not good or not beneficial to you. I'm saying, is it worth it to alter where you work, to change your work environment, to change who you work with, to go to something you don't know for that $1.50? Or would it be better to develop your skills and earn more money at that company and hope that the company sees the value in you and you see the value in the company? Mm-hmm. And I think big picture, that's what I'm saying is I hope the market gets to a place where it's not so fast that people can just jump for money that's given, that's not really been earned, that's given because they're gambling that maybe you can learn something, maybe you can do something, because that's not a good environment for you as an employee, and it's not a good environment for us as an employer. So one of the things we look for is that. I look for, has a guy been places, even if you've had multiple jobs, multiple companies you worked for, were you there for some duration?
Sure.
Especially, did you see progression? You know what I mean? Like, did you come in as a laborer at a company and you worked there a year or two, then you worked to be some sort of an operator, and then you moved on and you became a foreman somewhere else, and you went from a foreman to a superintendent? And I'm taking the course of somebody's career, but that jump would be of value. versus I was a laborer at a company for 3 months, and then I was a laborer for 6 months. Then I was off for 2 months. Then I came back and was a laborer for 4 months. Like, you start to look at it as an employer and question, why is this person moving so much? And whether it's because of lack of experience or ability or because of money, neither one makes you feel good necessarily.
Yeah. So you're talking a lot about like reviewing a person's resume, so to speak, before you even get to that face-to-face interview. And a lot of what we've seen, and I think some of it has to do with maybe how quickly the job marketplace has shifted or changed over the last few years. A lot of what we're seeing is like outdated resumes. Like, we're not even seeing current or relevant experience. We're seeing, jobs that were several years ago. And I think some of it is truthfully like, I think it's how quickly people were getting hired for a long time. And I think it also might play into the fact that, like, because any application was getting considered, you didn't necessarily have to like present yourself in the most current or recent light. But I know at times right now we're looking at those applications, we're looking at those resumes, and we're saying, well, like, I'm not sure that they actually read the job description. Like, like they've got maybe something that could have been considered relevant experience, but like, they're not telling me like how, what's happened in the last 2 years, what's happened, like, why is it the same? So,
my dad always said you have one chance at a first impression, right? And after that, it is what it is. And that's the thing. I understand we're not all tech people. We're not all computer people.
Yeah.
But proofread, maybe look at the website of the company that you're trying to apply for. Maybe write a cover letter if you really want to, like, there's something there. But the minor details, I mean, like, okay, look at it from not as a person looking to be hired, but the person that is reviewing these. They have volume to a point. They have more than one, at least. All they have to go off is that one page.
Right.
If that one page is current, it shows a significant length of history, depending if it's if you're just out of high school, you have your GPA maybe on there, whatever it is, or if you've been working in the industry for 10, 15 years, it has that history on it. Is it articulate? Because that presentation and the fact that you put in the effort shows to the hiring person possibly what your characteristics are. If you put in no effort, what is that really saying to the person that's trying to look for a new team member? When if the person that is applying, we'll put air quotes on that because applying loosely, didn't do any effort, that doesn't speak well and probably has a lower chance of being pursued further if that isn't happening. And, in certain white collar, that's kind of a more standardized thing. I know in our industry, it's a little bit less standard. It's usually Johnny knows Joey, who knows Sally, and that kind of is a little bit more of a thing, which sometimes is really, really good. But there is certain basics that, if you have a resume, have somebody else look at it. Like, there's those little things that really, you show up to the interview ahead of time, or, and if you ask a question about like the company, you need to have at least a base understanding of that company. Everybody has a web page now. It's not like you have to go somewhere crazy to find it. You type it on your phone, you'll be able to find out at least enough base information that you can speak coherently about the company that you're applying to.
Yeah.
All of those factors, which small and inconsequential to your actual job, are very telling signs for the people that are looking to add team members, because that allows them to feel that you've actually are invested in what you're trying to do.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and you have an idea of what you want to hire, right? Out of just being transparent. If you're hiring, you have a need. Like, I wouldn't hire people if we didn't need people. You know what I mean? When we, if we don't have enough work to keep people busy, I'm not going to be actively hiring people. So if I'm hiring, it's because we believe we need to either add people for work that's coming or for work that I'm currently doing. So there's a need there. And as that need grew and grew after COVID, the expectation became lower and lower. And we reached some bottom point where we were seeing resumes that had nothing. Like, they would apply. We would see we might have a job applications out for an operator, a laborer, a shop mechanic, and a foreman. We would have people apply for all 4 jobs with no resume and no information. And at some point I just said to Tracy, like, there's no reason to even like, and Tracy started to have to do more work where she would have to track it and say like, okay, this guy applied for 4 jobs. But in the interim of that, I do remember points at which Tracy would be like, okay, this guy applied for all 4 jobs, but he is actually pretty well suited resume wise for this one job. So that's a person that actually took the time to put the resume together, and the resume might be reasonable enough to draw the attention of an employer, but you still applied for all 4 jobs, 3 of which you weren't qualified for.
Right. Yeah.
And if you had just applied for one and you weren't qualified for it, I might consider it, because I would say like, okay, this person has showed that they have worked, they can work. They may not know what we're doing, but could they learn it? But when you apply for all 4, it's like you're just throwing something at the wall and seeing what sticks.
There's a guy named Ken Coleman out there, and he talks about like proximity and some of those things. And like with technology and AI, the ability to just push a button versus reading anything. I mean, I get from recruiting firms, which we've never used that I'm aware of. We read your job description. We see that you need a mechanic in Morgantown, West Virginia.
Yeah.
I was going to say that for that's I see it all the time.
You didn't read anything.
Right. Yeah. You read.
You scanned for some work keywords.
You saw Morgantown, assumed it was somewhere that we are not.
Right.
That will not help me whatsoever.
That's an automatic delete, right?
Yeah.
But I thought about it too, like Wawa. You can also still pick up the phone. Like, we will need some of this stuff from you, but we can help you possibly if there's some challenges on some things. Like, I go to Wawa sometimes, more times than some, but like sometimes there's someone in there that they don't understand the computer screen for ordering something. Someone will come around from the back and assist them or explain it to them. So like if there's an issue with the technology piece, because everything has gone to technology and emails and stuff like that, and if some people don't have those or are real strong in those skills, there's other ways of getting still through that process. Or someone can help you get through that process, those type of things. But, like you said, someone just sends you a blank, like John Smith. It's like, that doesn't really help anything to.
Most still take paper applications. Like,
right.
It
you can stop by.
Have to be done through ZipRecruiter or whatever.
And some of our best, some of our best applicants was not. I would say, I don't want to say most, but when one of our employees recommends someone to come on board, I don't necessarily need to see a resume. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to hire you without a resume, but it means if Stetson calls me and says, hey, I know this person, they're looking for work, can they give you a call? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now first you have Stetson's recommendation that Stetson's given you my number and telling you to call me.
Right.
Then I talk to you and you explain to me there was no need for a resume. Like you explained to me where you were and what. Now, when you come in, we're going to have you fill out an application.
Yeah. We still don't skip the steps.
Right. We don't skip the step. But in other words, so I don't want people to get a sense that technology has changed, that now you have to do it this way. There's still the old fashioned way. If you can develop a relationship before you step into the company that you're trying to get hired at, you're in a stronger position than anybody coming out of just, they did a ZipRecruiter search and they started looking, because you have some continuity. You have some understanding of what we do, of who we are, some of the people that work for us, all those things. And there's real value in that. At the end of the day, the biggest thing I can advise people out there is when you're going for a resume, when you're going for a job, you are selling something, right? And it's important to understand that what you're selling is you. And the company that's trying to hire you, they're really selling them, right? So it's an interaction where both people are trying to sell something,
and they want to buy.
They want to buy you, and you want to, like, in other words, it's a win-win. If it works right, and so make it valuable. Make it serious and take it seriously, and don't just blow it off and say, everybody's hiring. Unemployment's 3%. There's all I got to do is walk out there and I can get hired. I can go. Flip burgers for $20 an hour, whatever, like all these things that have happened. I don't think they're that healthy for people as humans.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Because it doesn't create self-worth. And really, when you're happy and you're effective in your personal and professional life, you feel valued in both pieces.
Yeah.
And so that's important when you're out there, that you want them to value you. You want to walk into a room and have them walk out and say, I'd really like that person to be part of my team. Not, I'm willing to pay this person X. Not, I have a hole that I have to fill. You want them to feel like they want you to be a part of their team. because it means they value you. And if they value you, you likely won't have to go through this again if you don't want to.
Sure.
You know, and that's important because it's unstable to people to have to keep going out and look for jobs, even if they say like, well, I made $1 every time I made a jump and I jumped 8 times, I make $8 more an hour. And it's like, yeah. And you've got a resume that's pretty long. You don't have any continuity and you are now paid $8 more than you were, 4 years ago. And you might be the first one that gets cut when things slow down because I don't know if you're worth the more or if you aren't, it's all factors.
Or do you have the relationships with the people?
Right. And you have the relationship.
Proximity, like if you know somebody that knows somebody, that's also very helpful. But the other thing I think you need to always apply for jobs in a sound mind, not because you're aggravated that day at something that happened. Everyone has emotions, lots of emotions, and not every day is rainbows and unicorns. Some days suck, or some days are rain days, right? And like if you automatically just start applying because one bad day or something like that, it comes through the tone of your interview. It comes through the tone of everything you're doing. And so, if there's a situation where you are somewhere and it's just not the right fit, you got to give it time. And then secondarily, like when you're ready, you make that application, but doing it on a split second is really not probably the optimum thing. I think the other thing is we were talking about earlier is that so the construction industry for a long time, very insular, kind of just worked within their own people, did what they needed to. They went out and hired outside recruiting firms. A lot of them did. Recruiting firms that have never recruited for construction. We know that lady, Shauna, or whatever it is, that only recruits for construction. And she just laughs because she's like, they can get people through the door. But when you're recruiting for construction, it is a different animal. And, you can't just do the same technique. You can do them and you'll get people in the door, but they like the longevity, the turnover ratio, all those things matter. And trying to get that good fit is really the key to how, everybody wins.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, we have internally sort of a hierarchy of like determining a candidate's fit, so to speak, in regards to, like how heavily we weight in certain factors. And it's interesting. You're talking about like, does somebody know them? And we mentioned earlier, it's sort of that networking component, right? Like it goes both ways, right? As a candidate, like if you know somebody working in another organization, ask them if they like it. Ask them how it's going. Ask them if they would recommend it. Ask them if they would give you a recommendation, right? The same thing happens for us internally. We get, somebody applies. We ask, does somebody know this person? Has somebody worked with them before? Like maybe you didn't know they were looking for a job, but that doesn't mean you don't know them, haven't heard of them, worked with them before, worked with somebody who knows them. And so we sort of have like this hierarchy, right? Of like how we make those decisions or how we evaluate things. And that's pretty high on the list. Like if Ford comes to one of us and says, look, I know this guy personally, and I'd like for us to consider him, that carries a lot of weight, right? And the same would be true in the situation that you referenced earlier with Stetson or any of those things. And so it's like, does someone recommend them? That's pretty high on the list of considerations. Because if you're going to stick your neck out for somebody, that usually means you hold them in high value already. Yeah, maybe you didn't recommend them, but maybe you're a reference. Like you know them. They said, like, I know of someone who works there. That's pretty high on the list, right? And then like, all right, maybe they don't know somebody who worked here, but there's some Kevin Bacon 7 degrees of separation that gets us to who they are and what they do. And, that's pretty high on the list. And then proximity, is it reasonable to expect that like they would come here? Have they had 9 jobs and the circle keeps expanding because they can't get a job in their hometown anymore? Like those things all matter. Right?
Well, and even, something we probably, I don't think we talked about is if you work backwards from the end goal. So you say like, okay, you're hired, right? And you meet with Tracy and you come on board. Before that, you do a field test.
Right.
And depending on the order of things, where field test falls, but I'm just saying, you do a field test and you're successful. Before that, you have an interview and the person says, I think this is somebody we'd like to have on board, right? And so what I think people might not realize is that first call when Tracy reaches out, and it's Tracy, that's really important to determine if you're going to get to the second step.
Right.
And it can actually skip steps. So if someone has a reasonable resume, they've put some effort into showing where they've been, and it's fairly current. And Tracy comes to me and says, I think this person is a really good culture fit, and hands me a resume that shows they would have done it, we're going to go right to field test. Because we will set up the interview afterwards just to come in, and that would be a quicker way to get an offer, is because you'd already have the field test, Tracy's on board, then you meet with one of the PMs, and right there they could make an offer.
Yeah.
But you've actually skipped a step because the value, the importance of that first call, sort of Ford's thing about you only get one chance to make a first impression. Our first impression is Tracy. Our first impression is Tracy saying, I think this person fits who we want to be as a company. I think they'd be a good fit here. And you can't underestimate that value, because if that phone conversation doesn't go well, you may be an operator, but you may never get to the field test. Because if Tracy says this isn't somebody we want to bring on board for whatever reason, I'm going to trust Tracy to be right. I'm not going to say, well, I acknowledge that, but their resume looks good, so we're going to interview them anyway. I'd really need to be in a position of need. And we have decided as a company that we're not going to do that, right? We've made a conscious decision that if someone talks to them and says, this person's not a good fit, then they're not a good fit and we'll find somebody else. So in that sense, that first interaction is actually more important than your resume. Because if Tracy says, I had a great conversation with this person and I think they'd be a really good culture fit, they're a hard worker, they want to work, they don't have a lot of experience in our field, but they're willing to learn, that's a person we might be able to bring on and say, okay, we're going to train them, follow our own core values. We're going to train them to be able to do what we want them to do because we believe they fit. Mm-hmm. Whereas the reciprocal is not true. If Tracy says this person is going to be a problem, they've jumped around, they're only leaving because, one specific instance comes to mind where someone had called, and it's sort of the culmination of a few things we've talked about. They called on a rainy day because they were shut down. And they were still guaranteed pay on that day, but they were just aggravated that they weren't going to get overtime. And Tracy and the person shared all this with Tracy on the first call. And I was like, Tracy, all right, we're in need of that spot and they do have the experience, but we can't talk to that person. Literally they're being paid by the company they work for right now while not working and complaining that they're not working enough. That's not a culture fit. That's a problem for us. Not because we're not going to have you work, because there's that little loyalty to the person who's paying you.
Well, and every form of construction that happens outside has rain days. Right. We cannot promise there will be 0 rain days. We can't turn the sky on and off. And the problems you face in one, and that kind of goes to what you were saying earlier, right?
Anger, upset.
Right state of mind. One bad day, one bad week, one bad month doesn't mean a bad job, a bad career. If you make those snap decisions, a lot of times that comes across in that interview. And I liked what you were saying, Dan, because I think that's important for candidates to know. Is the interview process starts with the first communication, right? It's not I went through these steps, I got the resume, I got the interview, I was phone screened, but now I'm going to be interviewed. So now I got to turn it on. Right now I got to it starts right at the beginning. The interview process starts with those first interactions, and they're crucial for us.
Well, I'll give a tip for people this, because I don't do the hiring anymore, but this was one thing. This was an automatic red flag for me. If someone came in and complained about their previous management, it was an automatic non-starter, because I knew that within 3 to 6 months or 3 to 6 days, depending on it, they were going to complain. It's always fun in the field, to blame the management or blame something about something that's not going right. But we talk about it all the time on here, how that's not our job is to find solutions. And so, complaining about your current work situation, your previous work situation, just the general service announcement. But I mean, like that for me. So I remember interviewing this guy. He had all the qualifications in the world back in the day, and he just came in and he spent like 10 minutes just complaining, and it was like, to me, that was a character issue, and that was the end of the conversation.
It boils down to something so simple that if I make it something completely different, I was thinking about the girls, thinking about Mara specifically, and in the election climate right now, where there's an election year. And Mara, as she's older, she's 12, so she's like a person, and can provide me coherent thoughts of as she sees the world, and they're interesting to me because they're sort of like uncensored, but also like blemished. They're not messed up by the world, they're not jaded.
She's not hardened yet.
She's not hardened yet, right? That's what I mean. And after we were watching the Olympics, and so we were watching it on Peacock because it's streaming for us. And there was 2 or 3 political ads that kept running, a couple for both sides. It wasn't one side or the other. And she said, why is all they talk about why the other person is bad? Like, even if they are bad, can someone just tell me what you're going to do, right? And that speaks to that point that Ford was just making. When you come into an interview, I'm not trying to understand why you're leaving where you were. I'm trying to understand why you want to be where we are, why you want to come on board with us. And you should be trying to find the same thing reciprocally. Like, in other words, I wouldn't accept an offer from a company who's explaining to you why the person you're replacing sucks. Like, because guess what's going to happen? Right? And it doesn't matter if you're the employer or the employee. And that's what's so funny about this interaction. It is an interaction. It is a relationship.
Sure. Yeah.
That's what you're building. So it's not one-sided. It's not you trying to sell yourself to me trying to sell myself to you. It's, does this work?
It's got to be mutual.
It's got to be a mutual relationship. And that's what a job is. You know what I mean? It's a relationship where we believe that we can be mutually beneficial if we work together.
Yeah.
And so know that going in, that's what you're trying to do. That's where you're trying to be. And it starts right at the start, because when Ford said about it used to be, with certain jobs and in a certain time frame where there'd be multiple interviews, there are.
Yeah.
They're just occurring you have one chance if you're coming through like the online version of this. You have one chance. You're going to submit a resume. If it's reasonable, then Tracy's going to give you a call. And if that's reasonable, then you're either going to end up at a field test or in an interview. And if that goes well, we're going to bring you in and make you an offer. Yeah. There's your 6 steps. It's just we've streamlined it now to where we're not saying come in 6 times, because we won't be able to hire you then. Like, you will get hired by somebody because the market is still that hot. But so we've streamlined it, but it's still there. So be aware that every time you have a conversation or an interaction, that is part of that interview process.
Yeah. I think that's a good place to sort of like summarize it, right? I mean, you said there's like 5 or 6 steps, and like that's what we're looking for. That's not every company. It's not everyone in the construction industry, but we're looking for someone who kind of understands where the market's at and knows that there's going to be a process involved, has been honest and professional with their resume. They've given us a clear indication of, who they are. They've done some type of connecting or networking in all likelihood. They've figured out, do they understand our organization? Are they connected to someone in our organization? Do we have a connection to them? The interview process starts on day 1, and we make it through all those steps and find a mutual spot for a long-lasting, hopefully, relationship. We make an offer, right? It is a bundled product. There's not really a lot of.
There's pass go.
There's different paths to graduation for sure, but usually you got to get through all of those and to have it be successful long.
I say to all the guys still that I hire, I want this to be your last interview, and I mean it genuinely. I don't want you in another interview. I believe you can end your career here. You just have to explain to me the path you want to take, and we should be able to get there.
Yeah. So that's probably a good place to wrap it up. We hope that you got something from this today, folks, and we hope you come back for another episode. Thanks.